NJ.com and the Heldridge Hotel. Welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your hosts, Steve Politi and Rutgers insider Brian Fonseca. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. Thanks to Keith Norton for the new introduction. Little Heldridge Hotel plug in there. Yeah, we're excited about that. We're excited to talk about the Oregon game, to make our picks. Brian, we have a guest picker that is I'm so excited about that I don't even want to name him here because I don't want to jinx it. I'm worried that, something will happen in the universe. Northeaster will come back or something will, there'll be a typhoon here. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm worried about it. So I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to say the name yet.
Probably for the best, according to everyone that watches our Twitter feeds. If we say anything, we jinx it immediately. We are the reason Rutgers loses games because we mentioned that they're winning or that a comeback is possible. So best to be safe than sorry.
I'm absolutely on board with that. Totally. All right. But we've got something to talk about. Otherwise, the most interesting Greg Schiano press conference, I don't know, since last year, certainly. It was some fireworks that were unexpected. I caused it. Blame me. Was told to halt, which has never happened in my career. I'm still laughing about it. I got to tell you, the circumstance of it make it even funnier. I think we should just dive right into that because it was a boring midweek press conference. All of us were like, what are we going to ask him? What are we going to ask him about? I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was just there because Kelly's in and talked earlier. And I thought, all right, well, I'll just go to the press conference. I'm down here. I'll show my face. And then, it was some fun.
It was a nice change of pace. You should show up to these press conferences more often.
No.
And I think you've unlocked the secret to getting Greg Schiano to be more forthcoming and more open. Just blatantly lie or misrepresent the truth in your question and force him to correct the record, right? You said there have been efforts in the past, and he was so taken aback by that. He's like, what efforts are you possibly talking about? And rightfully so. I don't blame him for his reaction, but that's just kind of the key.
Well, there were, in fairness, there were efforts, and this is where I was going with the question. I was trying to ask, and this is what I've heard from people. This is how I kind of feel about it. They're going to slap our NIL on the side of the building. People are going to walk into the stadium and see that, and they're going to be like, "Oh, we're doing this again?" No, we're doing something completely different. And so the question, the preamble, perhaps clumsily worded, was that I think people are going to see this and say that they've tried this before. And I was going to ask, what is different about this one? Again, a softball question. And what gives you confidence that this is going to be what gets you to the point where you can close that gap? And when I'm just trying to feed him a question that would get him talking about this, which in fairness to me, my question certainly did get him talking about it. I mean, that's the goal of a question. I even got praised by Fooch. Hey, got a good answer. Got a good answer. So it's a good question if you get a good answer.
Yeah, and I think he's been dying to say this stuff for years, right? I don't know if this is the right moment. I don't know if it's because you asked the question. I don't know if it was the question itself that poked him. I don't know what it was. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that was the last question of a press conference where I asked about NIL once. I believe Christian Dyer of 247 behind us asked about NIL. There was the NIL theme with Kelly's in, so I think it maybe bubbled up a little bit where he wanted to correct the record and say, and he acknowledged, right, people have tried. The Knights of the Raritan people have tried, but as much of an effort as people can give in their voluntary time, in their free time for free, what Greg wanted was to have an administration behind him. And I mean, he didn't pull any punches. He said they weren't even, forget the Big Ten level, they weren't even at the D1 level. Right. Like, that was, not only was he open about the situation, he was brutally honest. And listen, we've reported on it in the past. Keith Sargent had a great story 2 years ago, which if you go back and read the reaction to that, and compared to what we know now, it's just very funny how people assume that we were just making stuff up because we're NJ.com and not telling people the truth. Well, now the truth is here, and now you got Greg Schiano telling you the truth that we've been talking about for 2 years. Right. So that people can realize the reality.
He probably should have said that then, to be completely honest. He should have said what he said today a long time ago, I think. And maybe he recognizes that. I understand why he didn't back then, because you don't want to, I get it. He's a cautious guy to begin with. But what the situation behind the scenes, and I think they thought they could handle it, and they were trying to. Pat Hobbs was not doing what he was supposed to. Was actively against it, left it in the coach's hands, and Greg Schiano was spending Thursday nights of a game week, entertaining people trying to get some money. Not optimal, to say the least. And that's one thing Kelly Zinn talked about at her press briefing with us about this RNIL. It's that too much pressure on the coaches. She's got to hire staff. She's turning this whole thing into something, it's just beyond what it's supposed to be. People inside the organization handling this, professionals, fundraisers, getting corporations, getting money involved, the whole thing. So this is what's happening. This is why it's different. And Greg Schiano, I think his reaction was perfect. And I will say this, the interesting part about this, Brian, is like, you put that on our Twitter feed, which we only have the Rutgers Rant Twitter has 900 followers. So it's not, I don't think we've ever had a video that's gotten 800 views. This one's got 850,000 views already. I mean, it just went viral. I think people saw it. People thought, well, that's interesting. I did not see that coming even after he said it.
I had a feeling that it would, I don't know if it would go viral, but I knew it would resonate with people because it's, right. It's some truth in the midst of, one, NIL is opaque to begin with. Coaches are very paranoid to talk about their NIL situation because other coaches will take advantage of it. And two, because Greg Schiano says nothing, and all these coaches say nothing. Right. So it's a fun change of pace. But again, I think it was the emphaticness and the stark terms that Greg put it in that had people kind of seeing that. And I understand why he didn't talk about it 2 years ago, because he didn't want to ruin his rosy relationship with his athletic director. Yeah, him and Pat Hobbs were very close, and he didn't want to step on that and put that out publicly. So that's why he didn't talk about it.
That must be it. There is a lesson here, because it's funny, and this really is the first time that this program has broken through. In the noise of the modern media bubble, and it's this kind of press conference moment, for someone who is very guarded with his comments, for who makes sure no one inside the program says anything remotely interesting. I don't know. Is there value in that? Is it people talking about Rutgers for a minute? The fan base sees him fired up. Maybe they're down on him before, and they say, hey, yeah, that's right. That's my guy. I remember. That's what I like. Screw you, Politi. Maybe there's a moment that some people see it and they get interested again. I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to be gained sometimes when you're honest. I mean, look at all the attention Kirk Cignetti's gotten for stuff like this, over the years for being, not flamboyant, it's not the right word, but for being honest and for saying what's on his mind and not having no filter. I mean, it's kind of how you break through.
I just think there are differing schools of thought here, right? There's an idea that if you talk about how bad the NIL is in honest terms, it could be used against you in recruiting. I think Greg coming out and saying this could be an alarm to the people that may be on the fence about giving money to Rutgers. They could think, well, Rutgers has enough support from other places. The NIL isn't that bad. They got all these kids in the portal, yada, yada. This, to me, is a wake-up call that says, no, Rutgers does not have NIL. They're at the bottom of the Big Ten, if not the worst, one of the worst, right? And if Rutgers wants to compete, and if you want to get out of this cycle of losing these close games and being in the bottom half of the Big Ten and never really competing, and Oregon's coming to town, if you want to go into a game like that with any realistic hope of Rutgers putting a scare into Oregon, then you got to give some money and you got to get some funding into the program, because I don't think the timing is great either, because you're coming off of 3 straight losses, probably a 4th straight loss, and that turns this into here comes Greg and the Rutgers starting to spin their losses into, it's all about NIL, which, again, we talked about this on Monday, so not to rehash that. I think maybe this would have been a better conversation to have in the off season, right? When things are going good and you talk about this stuff, maybe that would be helpful. But to me, in my opinion, getting this out there is good. The more truth that's out there, the better. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk about these things with more data to work with, because otherwise, half the time we're talking about them not having any money. The fan base is talking about the money doesn't matter. People think they have better NIL than they actually do. I think it's, in my opinion, obviously from where we stand, it's always better that coaches say things that are more interesting. But I think it's a good thing for the program to get this out there and for people to understand the dire straits they're in and how much help they actually need.
Right. And yes, and the opaqueness makes it very hard to cover college sports right now. We think we know what different schools have. We don't. We certainly have read, Mark Cuban giving a big number to Indiana. We think that's obviously why they're pretty good right now. They just beat the team Rutgers is about to play. Phil Knight for years. Greg Schiano talked about this. This is nothing new. This element of it, the money going to certain programs that are better funded than others. He's always been up against that from the beginning. Rutgers has always been up against that. I don't know. There's real hope now. I think the confidence that Kelly's in is showing that she's going to be able to get him some money. And that's what I wrote this morning in my column. It's like the people and the buzz is starting, and it's going to get louder if Rutgers goes 4-8 this year. That it's got a coaching change. This is not working. You're going to have, this is what they're going to do, and they're right to do it. They're going to try to arm him with money to see if this is by far the reason. Right? It might not be. You might arm him with money and he goes 6-6 again. I don't know, but they've got to get to the point where they check this box and prove it and show it. And give Callie Zinn credit for coming in and being able to do that in such a short period of time, which I'm still very impressed with. You're going to see those our NIL things on the scoreboard in front of the players' lounge at the stadium. All over in different places in the stadium. They're not looking for you to give the money. To be clear, something else entirely. They want corporate investments. And I think that's what's driving this thing. That's where they're looking for money. Kelly Zinn said, I haven't been told no yet, which is amazing at Rutgers.
Has she been told yes, though?
She didn't say that. That's a good point. God, Brian.
That's the question, right? Sometimes it's not about what they say, it's what they don't say. But yes, it's good not to hear no, obviously. The RNIL thing, we walked out to our cars after meeting with Kelly Zinn. There were RNIL bumper stickers on our cars. The same was this when I went to the stadium parking lot, stickers all over the cars. My understanding is they were handing out RNIL shirts at the College Avenue gym to students. They're making a big push for it. Yes, fans aren't giving the money to NIL directly, but they're giving money to the R Fund that funds the money to pay for the 6 or 7 full-time staffers they're going to have to get the money out of the businesses. I don't know. Again, this NIL is so opaque in so many ways, not only how much money programs have, but how the NIL system functions, right? I guess just to wrap up this point, the Signetti thing is a death knell for all these programs that aren't having immediate success, because I saw Bill O'Brien talk about Boston College today, and fans were like, what do you mean it takes so long time to turn around a program? They did it at Indiana. Well, if we knew how much NIL money every program had to work with, and we can compare that to the wins, and have some data to work with, then we'd realize that as great of a coach Curt Cignetti is, he's working with a bigger war chest than a lot of coaches, and it's not a fair one-on-one comparison to think that every program is going to hire a new coach and suddenly win 10 games.
Right. Absolutely. That is totally correct. All right, let's halt there. I use that word quite a bit. Halt. And then he kind of, it was more like halt. And then he kind of like the disappointed father look. He went from like halt, stop, just stop talking, Politi. And then it was like, I just I'm sad that it's you, Steve. Of all the people here to disappoint me today, that was the look I got. Which people think like, oh, Politi's mad. I mean, I couldn't have loved him more. I felt alive for 5 minutes. And like, oh, something interesting's happening.
Yes. He did the same thing with me when I asked him about where is there, because he always says they're close and they're almost there. And I asked him, where is there? And he's like, well, Brian, you would know better than others because you've been covering this team for so long that we've gone from bad to, decent, or however he worded it. So I also got the scolding like, you should know better than that.
Now that I think about it, you might be the reason he barked at me. I think you set him up. You got him into them. You like greased the skids there with your "where is there" question, which but was it? It was a very funny question because then he acknowledged that there is no there. Like there is not a place, which is new information for people. Every time he says we're not there yet, turns out there is no there anyway. So
the journey is the destination.
Yes.
There's no like definitive there. Obviously there, if there is a destination, it's a national championship, right? But I think what he means is like being at a point where you win, instead of going 0-3 against Minnesota, Iowa, and Washington, you go 2-3 maybe. That's kind of what he means. But I think in an ideal world for him, there is this mythical place that's ahead, and then you'll eventually get there. in Schiano's world, Rutgers is always going to be close and not quite there.
Exactly. Yes. I hope our special guest comes on and saves this pod, because we're not there yet either. All right, let's talk some Oregon football coming to town. I think people were a little surprised that we didn't have any Oregon questions at the Oregon press conference, which the point taken. And from the can't catch a break department for this program, you got to play Oregon the week after their first loss, 30-20 to Indiana. Now they're in the position where they cannot lose again to be guaranteed to playoffs. It might make the playoffs, but certainly if you lose to Rutgers, I think you can kind of cross that out. Hard to imagine you're one of the 12 teams still standing at the end. So yeah, they know this is the margin of error is gone. Very talented team with high expectations. What do you think we're going to see from them here in Piscataway?
Well, another mobile quarterback, which is obviously a major issue for this defense. A top 15 offense and top 15 defense. So in other words, a really good top 10 team. Greg Schiano said they have more speed than they faced in a long time, which is not great for a secondary that can't cover. So I see a lot of things that are not good signs for Rutgers if you're hoping for an upset. This, like every other game Rutgers is going to play this season, the only real chance you have of an upset is a shootout. So you're going to need Ethan Kaliakmanis in the offense to have the greatest days of their career, because based on what I've seen from Oregon's offense, I know they only scored 13 points against Indiana. Indiana also has a top 10 defense. It's going to be a game where you got to win like 51-50 if you want to have any shot.
Yeah, you're going to have to have Dante Moore make some mistakes. He did throw 2 interceptions against Indiana, which kind of cost them the chance to win that game. But yeah, you're going to need this offense to on all cylinders and then some. It's interesting though. I was looking at what Dan Lanning had to say, and it was some high praise. Like he thinks that Antoine Raymond might be the best running back they face this year, is what he said, which is, or at least he said he's playing at that level, which is certainly high praise. They've had some issues at corner. If you're looking for reasons to have some hope, I don't know. They're coming into this game where you talk about top 15 defense, but I think there'll be some chance for Rutgers to move the ball. The problem is, I just don't see. This is a better version of the Washington offense, a better mobile quarterback, talent across the board, a couple of really good running backs. And if these guys get open in space the way the Washington receivers are open, they're going to score. Or you're going to have some big chunk plays, and that's the one thing Rutgers can't have.
Yeah. Yes. Look, I didn't watch the press conference, to be clear, but as a rule, whenever I hear a coach being overly complimentary of the other opponent, right, it's because they know their team is that much better. Like when I hear that,
it was complimentary. It was just being nice. He's a nice man, Dan Lanning.
I'm sure he is. He's a very enthusiastic man from what I've seen in his post-game press conferences. But what I would say is, like, think of what Greg says about an Ohio or a Miami of Ohio or Norfolk State, where he talks about them before the game, where like they're going to, beat the 2000 Ravens or something, right? Like, I don't take that necessarily as a good thing that the coach is being complimentary, but I guess it's better than him being a dick. Like some coaches are, right? So, but yeah, look, Rutgers needs everything to go right for them. They need everything to go right. They need Ian Strong to have an all-time game. They need Antoine Raymond to be breaking tackles left and right. They need their defense to come up with, the Jabomi play times 3, like 3 different times, 2 picks, a pick 6. They just need Oregon's quarterbacks to drop potential pick 6s. They need everything, right? This is a top 10 team. Rutgers hasn't beaten a ranked team in 16 years, let alone a top 10 team, which I don't think they've done since 2007 against South Florida.
Right.
So this win, if they defeat Oregon, it would save the season. It would give Greg Schiano new life. It would be an all-time watermark. But the reason for that is because it would be a borderline miracle if they win this game.
It'd be one of the 3 best wins of all time. 3 to 5 top wins for this program. What? 2?
Top 2.
You think Louisville
would not be matched yet, but you're being a top.
What about 6-4 over Princeton, 1869? You're going to count that one?
That's a national championship win.
It's a national championship, babe. Come on. Split national championship. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe number 3 then.
The problem is, and the speed thing is real, and that that's just something that Greg Schiano has not been able to solve in 2.0. Like you can say he managed to get it on the offense side. He's not been able to figure that out on the defensive side. I mean, I think, it was glaring. It's been glaring a few times. It was glaring in the Rate Bowl against Kansas State. Thought they just had more speed. I mean, obviously it's been glaring against every time you play the Penn States and the Ohio States. And here's just another one where there's just going to be a team that is just faster to the ball, faster down the field, big play capabilities. And I just don't know. I don't know how Rutgers counters that. That to me is the biggest problem right now, going with in a lot of ways with this team and the program overall. They just need more speed.
Well, you counter that in recruiting. Can't really teach a guy to run faster. You just get fast guys in the program, right? And again, you named every team aside from Kansas State there is a blue blood top 10 recruiting class every year. That's it's not a coincidence. I just don't think there's, to a certain level, you could scheme against that, but when the disparity is as vast as it is, there's just nothing Rob Smith could call that will make up for that gap. Right? You just have to. The way you counter that is getting to the quarterback and not giving them time for those receivers to get downfield. The issue is that they don't have the speed or strength or size on the defensive line to get to the quarterback. And when they do get to the quarterback, he's going to be able to scamper out as as other quarterbacks have done this year. So you're in a real pickle if you're the Rutgers defense.
Homecoming, big crowd, sellout. I think they're expecting it to be a madhouse is the word I heard. Will the atmosphere help, you think?
It always helps, but this is Oregon that just won at Penn State during their whiteout, which is one of the top 3 to 5 best atmospheres in college football. And they almost seem to relish in playing in that environment. So it'll help. I don't think it'll hurt. I just don't think it's going to be, what is it, a 17.5 point spread? I don't think it's going to get you 17.5 points,
2.5, get you a couple. We'll see.
Maybe.
All right. So let's stop there. We'll come back. And if it's just the two of us, that karma's against us. I'm getting punished for question to Greg Schiano. The universe is conspiring against me. But if there's a third person on here, it's going to be a very special Rutgers rant. We'll be back in a minute to find out. All right, we are back with Leonte Carew, the one and only. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Happy to be here, guys.
We've been thinking about you a lot these days.
Okay.
And I'm sure you know why. Because this is the first time we've watched this team, and we've thought in a long time that there are players like you on offense, playmakers who can dominate. And I'm just wondering if you yourself are sitting at home going like, man, that kid reminds me a little bit of myself during my prime.
Absolutely, especially being that one of them is probably going to break my record. So I watch every game cringing like, hey, guys, slow down. No, I'm only kidding. I hope both those guys break my record, but they're tremendous. Both big physical guys. I just love the way they catch the ball at the point of attack. That's what really reminds me them of me. Just the way they catch the ball. They're fearless over the middle. I think I was a little bit faster than those guys, but I wish I had their size, man. Those are big, strong, physical receivers. I really like their game a lot.
And the physicality. I mean, Ian Strong, I think, had 14 targets against Washington. They're not scared to throw them the ball a lot. Is that something that when you were a receiver, you were saying every down, give me the ball. I don't care how many times I have to catch it?
Absolutely. Especially on third down, any down, honestly, when I was at Rutgers, I'm a little bit jealous of their dynamic duo. I wish, not to knock any of the teammates I had, but I wish I just had another guy that was kind of like that. But if you could correct me, are they from the same high school?
They are. They play in the same team, if you can imagine that.
Yes. So it kind of gave me a little flashback of kind of like me and Nova, just them having that connection on the field. It was kind of like how me and Gary were in high school. Then we transitioned to college. So I just think that aspect is very cool. You get to do it with your brother that you've been doing it with 4 years prior to college. And it kind of reminded me of me and Gary just going out there, just making plays in high school and then in college together. So
it's funny because that's the thing I remember about, especially your junior and senior years when you were playing, was like everyone knew, all right, they're going to throw the ball to Leonte here. And the team still couldn't stop. You were the only real weapon they had. It was like back when Ray Rice was playing. Well, they're going to hand the ball to Ray Rice here. He's going to get 10 yards. And they handed it to him. He got 10 yards. That's how I felt watching you. And I wonder if you look back on that too, like that groove you were in, especially those couple of games. We'll talk about them specifically, but Michigan State and Indiana, when you were, every time you caught the ball, it was like 20-yard gain.
Yeah, no, it was definitely fun. I remember those times like it was yesterday. There was a lot of, we were under a lot of heat, had a lot of guys suspended that year. So the game plan pretty much was like, hey, we're just going to go all in, but we're going to go all in with you. So just be ready and just be on your A game. And I remember Anthony Campanelli, who's now the DC for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was also my coach at Don Bosco, and he was my coach at Rutgers, and he was my receiver coach. And I remember, we've had a 15-year relationship at that point. I've been going to the Bosco camp since I was in 6th grade, so I've known him for years. So he can kind of talk to me the way he used to talk to me, and he's like, listen, I don't care about anything else. You better score every single time the ball is thrown to you. Just us having those talks. And I remember during those 2 games, I went on a 2-game stretch where I had 6 touchdowns. I remember in the Indiana game, I actually hurt my ankle, and I hurt it pretty bad. And I remember I was on the training table when we got back on. So it was that Monday, and Anthony Campanelli and Jeremy Cole came into the training room, and they're like, we got 32 NFL scouts calling us. They want to see you play against Ohio State. Get your ass up off this table and get in the weight room. My ankle's in a cast just like this big. And I actually went out there and I attempted to play in the first half. And I remember I had like 3 nice catches on, I think the corner was Eli Apple and Conley, who ended up being 2 first-round picks. And my ankle was just swollen, and I tried to play to the second half, but I just couldn't do it anymore. But that was kind of the dynamic of my experience at Rutgers, especially my senior year. Was like, we need you out there, or we don't have a chance. So,
yeah, and it is amazing because you didn't have. I mean, there were some games you only had 7. You never had a game with more than 7 catches. I'm looking back in your stats, and that blew my mind when I saw it. But it's always like, 7 catches, 127 yards or something. Like, yeah. But you never had one of these games where you had like 13, 14 catches.
No, never. People don't realize, like, I only played, I think I had some weird stat coming out of college. I only played 28 games. Like, I didn't get a chance to be like Ian or KJ where they got to play as freshmen. I only played kickoff as a freshman. Never got in. And I remember I used to have conversations with Coach Brock, who was the OC at the time, and Coach Flood my freshman year. And I used to see guys having fun on scout team. And I used to just be in practice, literally doing nothing, just sitting behind Brandon Coleman, Mark Harrison, Tim Wright. And I wasn't getting any reps. And it's funny, like looking back and me telling this story. I remember me going in Coach Flood's office. And I damn near wanted to transfer because it was like, I'm not doing anything. You guys burnt my red shirt on kickoff, and I'm not getting any reps at practice, and I'm not getting any scout team reps. So how am I getting any better? And I remember he said, Leonte, relax. He said, we're making you travel because you're not like all these other freshmen. You're going to play next year, and I need you to have the experience of traveling and getting to know the system. He's like, you're going to be the guy. Calm down. And I remember my sophomore year Fresno game, going against Devontae Adams and Derek Carr, that's kind of when I made my name and I blew up. I had 3 touchdowns that game. Me and Devontae were kind of going back and forth. So, so I was saying I only played, I think, 28 games and I had, 29 career touchdowns or something like that. Because, I obviously my senior year I got hurt. My junior year was the only complete season I played. Right. Sophomore year I missed 3 games, and my senior year I missed 5. And I still managed to be, first team all Big Ten. So, it just goes to show, guys, you just gotta to Ian and KJ, if you're listening, just win every day, compete every single day, work hard. My mindset was after a while, when you start to get the flow of like what your school's about, it turned into, I don't think a lot of my teammates are here to seriously win and want to win games and want to play football. I mean, I remember us going to Ohio State and guys are taking pictures of Ezekiel Elliott and showing the stadium. And it's like, guys, we're playing these guys. So after you start to realize that, it's like, all right, you know what? I got to do what's best for the team. And that's going to be my leadership and me working as hard as I can. So KJ and Ian, you know, I tell this story all the time. I used to catch, nobody knows this, but I used to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and catch 150 balls off the jug machines at Rutgers. You know, that's some of the things I used to do. And if I could give them any advice, is just, you know, just try to win and compete and do everything 100 miles per hour. And, you know, just don't let anybody out compete you. So
I would imagine that if you had went to Coach Brock with that same message that you went to Coach Flood with, he would not use the word relax. I don't think that word is in Coach Brock's vocabulary that I've seen of him. But he's back.
You know what's so funny? I completely forgot that Coach Brock is back as the receiver coach as I'm telling this story.
That's exactly what I was going to go with.
Coach freshman year. And I'm like, Coach, like, I want to play. And he's like, calm down. Like, just you're going to play. Like, just relax. You're going to be the guy next year. And then he ended up not even being there. So that's
right. Well, he's back now when he's coaching KJ and Ian, and I think he gets a lot of credit. Him and then before he left, John Perry last year, and then now Coach McNulty's back coaching the wide receivers. It feels like Greg has a lot of guys he trusts that are always around. You know, Coach Brock will be the wide receiver coach in 2046 if Greg is still around. But anyway, Coach Brock is coaching those two guys. Just what kind of lessons do you think he's teaching them, and what kind of coaching are these two kids getting? Because it's clearly working. But how would you describe Coach Brock's style of development?
Woo, you guys ready for these stories? I mean, I tell you what, I think Coach Brock is definitely, I haven't seen him in action at practice. Coach Brock is by far one of my favorite coaches of all time. But I remember we came in freshman year, and, you know, when you go through the recruiting stage, every coach is nice, right? So every coach is kind of like, hey, you know, we want you at the school, blah, 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 blah. But when we got to the first day of training camp, Coach Brock let it be known that you guys are freshmen and you guys are going to shut up and you guys are going to practice and do what I say. And that was kind of his mindset. But, hey, it made us tough, you know, and he had I remember Coach Brock is one of those very detailed coaches. He had no time for stupidity. So when I got there, I think that we called ourselves the Big Three. It was me, Carlton Agadosi, Ruan Pill. We couldn't get the playbook down to save our lives. And he's like, you guys are dumb as a brick. He was just destroying us. And I remember my one teammate Carlton, when he didn't know the play, he would just run a spot route. So if he had like a 20-yard fade or a 16-yard in cut, if he didn't know, he just ran a 6-yard spot. So Coach Brock just started calling him Spot. He's like, you're fucking spot. So you know, Coach Brock is the best, and I'm pretty sure he's coaching those guys hard. When I see them catching the ball at the point of attack, when I see them blocking downfield, when I see them, you know, getting off the ball and playing hard, I know Coach Brock is on those guys every single day. They're lucky to have a coach like Coach Brock. Seriously.
You said something great about that first year, that kind of happy to be there kind of feeling when you're taking pictures in the stadium and whatnot.
Yeah.
Was it hard to shake that? I mean, you know, I guess there was because there was a happy to be there feeling. Like Rutgers was happy to be in the Big Ten. I mean, that was a huge moment that you went through. I mean, what was that like? You know, that
you know, for me, you know, I just think coming from Don Bosco and playing in kind of like, you know, big games at a high school level, I think it almost prepared me a little bit. And then, like I talked to you guys about before, I think traveling my freshman year and then scoring touchdowns my sophomore year, that also prepared me too. I remember like it was yesterday, like guys were really starstruck that we were playing in the big house and we were playing at Ohio State's, you know, because guys, you know, they come from lower level high schools and they never played at stadiums like that. So we would get there and guys would just have their phones and they'll be taking pictures. And then you overhear guys saying, oh my God, that's Ezekiel Elliott right there. It's like, guys, oh, there goes Bosa. Like, we're playing against these guys. Like, your mindset should be, if I tackle Ezekiel Elliott for loss or I catch a pass on Eli Apple, I have my draft stock rises. My stock rises in a sense. So that was my mindset. It was like I wanted to beat these guys. Like, I wanted to embarrass these guys, you know. So, you know, I do think there was a little bit of a, you know, guys were happy to be in the Big Ten, but there wasn't a mindset of like we could actually do this and win it. You know, I think the only time we had that is when we played Penn State and Michigan, and those were like our two closest games. I mean, my senior year, when we played Michigan State, I think guys were we went to war because of all the things that were happening around Rutgers. Like, that was my first game back from suspension. I didn't even practice. I didn't practice. I don't know if you guys know this. I literally got exonerated from that case on Friday, and I played on Saturday. I didn't practice or condition for a whole week. And I went out there.
I did not know that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I met with the coaches Friday night at like 10 p.m. They gave me the whole game plan. I had a walkthrough Saturday morning, and I just went out there and just let it rip that Saturday night. So
that's incredible. The numbers in that game, let me see. 7, 134, 3 touchdowns, and a 31-24 loss.
Yeah.
Not bad
with
for
no
night.
Practice.
No practice.
You do all that work, you get the 3 touchdowns, you guys are right in it, and then it's the infamous spike game on 4th down. Not to bury Chris Laviano here, but what do you remember about the moment in the stadium where that happens? I have to imagine all the air just kind of went out, and it's one of those, like, we're going to remember this here for a long time.
So it's so funny. I'm so happy that I get to do these sometimes, so you can so people can understand the backstories behind this. This was the backstory. We ran an incomplete pass. We got a penalty, I think, on 1st down. Then we ran a play on 2nd down. Then we had an incomplete pass on 3rd down. I swear to God, the scoreboard never changed. So when my offensive coordinator looked up and my coaches looked up, it still said 3rd down on the scoreboard. No. But for some reason, everything got confused because of the penalty. So I knew for some reason when I was sitting there, I'm thinking in my head, like, it's 4th down. And I hear our coach go and spike it. I see him looking at it, spike it. And if you could go back and look at that play somehow, I'm looking at Chris Laviano like this, like kind of like, no, like, don't spike the ball. It's 4th down. But they were looking at the scoreboard. And I still have the memory in my head because Coach who was the intern head coach for that game?
Maurice Wilson.
Maurice Wilson was the intern head coach, and I remember McDaniels was my OC. And I remember both of their eyes went to the scoreboard. And I remember the scoreboard didn't switch yet. So it said like 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 15, whatever it was. And they were going, spike it. And I'm like, no. And then he spiked it, and I was just like, game. I mean, we probably would have lost anyway, but you never know what happened. I was on fire that game. You know, I could have got a tip pass or something. Who knows? But, you know, yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where I said, we're going to be on ESPN, not top 10 plays for sure.
That was such a weird time, man, because that was, Flood was out and say what you want about Kyle Flood, but like he was a pretty good in game situations. Like on Saturdays, Kyle Flood was a good coach. Like, maybe during the week you might have wanted someone else there sometimes, but on Saturdays he could have handled that stuff.
I agree. Coach Flood probably would have never made that mistake. But shout out to the scoreboard guys for screwing us over. You guys got to change the scoreboard. Like, we thought it was 3rd down.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. Wild. All right. So this is something we've asked every player who's been on this podcast so far. Do you ever think back, like if NIL had started 10 years ago, like what you would have been, what your life would have been like change wise if the money they were throwing around young players now that were throwing around when Leonte Carew was a sophomore in college, what would have this been like for you?
So it's funny. I for shits and gigs, I actually asked my agent one time because I just called my agent because they do NIL deals for high school kids too. So yeah, high school kids are now getting NIL deals. So I asked my agent, I said, hey Rob, what do you think what would you have negotiated if I was in college? What would have been my NIL worth? And he said, by the time you were a senior, I think you would have been worth like $3.8 million.
Are you sorry you asked?
Just based off of jersey sales, like them selling your jersey in the stores, just off of your because he was saying all right, by your senior year, you were established. So if you wanted to transfer to like a Ohio State or Alabama, he's like, you would have had the credibility where he thinks that Rutgers would have had to match a team for that price, So, you hear those numbers and you're just like, I'm happy I paved the way. I'm happy there were guys like Ray Rice who paved the way for me. And, I paved the way for guys like Ian Strong and KJ Duff now. But, you just hear you pull up to a game and you see all these nice cars in the parking lot. And it was like, I didn't get a car until I got drafted to the NFL. It's like, it's not fair sometimes, but, I'm happy for those guys more than anything. So.
You should be getting some residual checks, like Friends, like all the Friends actors do over the years. You should have gotten some.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ian Strong should be sending you like it's a part of whatever he's making, right? Absolutely.
I can't imagine what those guys are going to be making next year. Prices go up.
Neither can Greg Schiano. I think that's the problem. Yeah. Ian Strong's going to be making it on Sundays someplace, though. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree.
When's the last time you've been to a Rutgers game? We ask all our guests this as well. I'm curious.
I usually get pretty lucky. I get Audi Club seats. Ooh. So I'm up there with the big dogs, but I haven't gone to a game this year. I went to like 4 last year. But when you're on daddy duties nowadays, I have a 2-year-old daughter, so time is very valuable with her. So I much rather just put her little Rutgers onesie on and put my Rutgers hoodie on and just kind of watch it from my couch,
Nice.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you are a podcaster yourself.
Yes.
A great show called Washed. A really honest podcast just about some of, your own life after football, some struggles, career changes, finding your footing. Just curious, like what made you decide you wanted to open up about that? And what was your own journey there yourself to kind of find your footing in life?
Honestly, it's really kind of transitioning into what I want to do now. When my career was over, I went through, suspension in the NFL. Then I went through, I had a really bad career-ending injury, ended up tearing my hip and then getting diagnosed with pulmonary embolism, being in ICU for 10 days, basically almost dying. And when you're sitting there at 25 years old and a doctor comes in and he says, we might have to amputate your leg and all this stuff, I realized that, football is a small part of what your life really is. So with that being said, my mindset right there just automatically changed. It was like, hey, you know what? You're a tremendous football player, but maybe there's more to life than just football. So then it led me into coaching, and I loved coaching. I was coaching at Bosco for 4 years, and my time there coaching, I've had D1 receivers. I've turned, little Bergen County white kids into, going to University of Delaware now, scoring touchdowns. So, I knew I was a tremendous coach, but what I really got out of it was I noticed that all the kids in practice would be like, hey, coach, can I pull you aside? Like, what's up? And they would start talking to me about their girlfriends or their home life. And they just had a tremendous amount of trust in me. And I was like, maybe I'm not really the best coach in the world. Maybe I'm just a really good mentor. Maybe these kids feel so comfortable with me that, they love my advice. So I then said, I was like, you know what, maybe being that the NFL pays for it, maybe it's a good time to go back to school and get my master's. So I actually graduate in December. And that's kind of what led me to the podcast was, how about I start sharing my story so some of these younger guys don't make the same mistakes I made and they could, play a lot longer career than I did or make the right, business moves or whatever outside of football. So it led me to get my master's. I'm getting it in basically sports psych. And I graduate in December, and what I want to do is I kind of want to be like they call them player engagement coaches. Mm-hmm. I kind of want to be like a player engagement coach for one of these NFL teams and or in college. Maybe if Greg's listening, come back to Rutgers and kind of just help these guys mentally, just get them mentally ready for what's coming after college, whether you don't make it to the NFL or you do make it. There's a ton of guys that need that help. And what I realize is they don't want to really listen to a therapist that they can't relate to. They want to listen to guys that played and I could give them every story. I was adopted in high school to go to Don Bosco. I grew up poor. I grew up rich. I can relate with any kid. So, I'm just happy to help this younger generation. And I really feel like I could do a great job at it. So.
Awesome. Absolutely. That is a worthy path and not an easy one to make that shift and go back to school. So congratulations. December, huh? That's nice.
Yeah, December. Yeah, I got I'm in my last semester. It's kicking my butt right now, but I'm in my last semester right now. So
that's awesome.
I admire that because there's no way I could imagine going back to school. And I still have nightmares of doing homework and like missing assignments. I can't imagine going back to that because it would be, I wasn't a good student to be fair, but it would be a nightmare.
Yeah, it's rough. I'm not gonna lie. But
All right. Well, here maybe you can help this next generation make some money on this game here with your guest prediction for entertainment purposes, of course. Because we
yes.
can't gamble on Rutgers here in New
No.
Jersey. We have to say that
No.
every week. It's Oregon minus 17.5, though. It's a big number, a pretty big number. I don't know. Rutgers has been decent. What are your thoughts on the Ducks? What are your thoughts on this game? Can you give us a pick?
All right, so the Ducks are coming off a brutal loss, right? I mean, Indiana was pretty good. We are coming off a bye week, or no? No, we just lost to Washington. Yes, sorry. So I think homecoming, even though in the past homecoming has not always treated us well, especially when I was at Rutgers. We've had a lot of questionable homecoming games. I think one year then we played Kent State.
Oh yes, you did. Yeah, 7-0 Kent State. That's what I was thinking of too. Yeah.
I like us plus 17.5, but I tell you what bet I like the most. I like the over. Because my man Ethan throws for 350 yards every game. So it's like they're gonna find ways to get the ball down the field. I mean, surprisingly, for the first time, it's crazy to say this, but it's actually not the offense. Yeah. I feel like the defense has been playing a little, under what they should be playing at. Like the offense has kind of been, doing what they were supposed to do. But when I was there, it was pretty much like if I didn't score, we didn't score. Then when I left, I mean,
nobody scored.
When I left, no one scored. So it's actually kind of cool. Like I swear, I talk to Mike Kuzniak all the time. He's one of my greatest friends. He was the the equipment manager when I was at Rutgers. We were texting all nonstop during the game, and it's just so fun to see these running backs and the two receivers and Ethan and the line just playing well. It's just so fun to see points being scored. So I like the over because I think it's going to be a back and forth kind of thing. I don't think Oregon's going to come in here and beat us by 17. First of all, it's a long flight for them. Everybody knows that kind of matters sometimes. And, I think they're coming off a loss. And I think what Rutgers does do really well is they do a great job adjusting after a bad loss. So I think Coach Flood's going to have a great game plan for these guys. And I think they're just going to go out there and execute. And plus, they got to come to Jersey. Jersey's tough. No guys from Oregon's coming here beating us up. You know what I'm saying? Jersey strong.
See, all right, taking the 17.5. You're going to take Oregon to win, or you think Scarlet Knights can pull it out?
I'm going to take Rutgers to win.
There you go. All right.
I'm riding with Rutgers. Rutgers is going to win. They're going to win. They're going to win 56 to 52 is going to be.
Oh man,
it's going to be a shootout.
That's not just the over. That is way over, man. Parlay. You got to drive to Delaware and parlay that pick right there. 100 points. Rutgers to win. Yeah, you could.
Rutgers is going to win. Aren't they going to? From what I hear, and what's his name, Dante Moore.
Dante Moore.
Yep. He was like almost. Before that loss, he was kind of favored for the Heisman starting to be right.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I think Greg shuts him down. I don't know. I'm joking about the 56-52, but it's going to be a really good game, and I think Rutgers pulls it off late.
Nice. All right, great pick. Brian, you as confident in the Scarlet Knights?
I am not. I am not. I just think I agree with Leonte that the offense is going to, if they have any shot, it's going to be led by the offense. That's kind of just the case the whole season. I think they're going to put up points because they've put up points against everyone. Even though this Oregon team they're going to be the best defense they faced so far. I see them putting up, 28, 30 points, just like they have the last few weeks. I just don't think they can hold Oregon to less than 40. Just the way Oregon's playing, the talent they have, the speed Greg Schiano's talked about. I just think it's a lot for a defense that struggled against Ohio to shut down Oregon. Unless, to Leonte's point, Oregon pulls up Penn State after losing their first game of the season, they completely implode. I think Dan Lanning has a little better grasp of this program than James Franklin had at Penn State, where he was kind of just holding on by a thread. Yeah. So I'll go Oregon 41, Rutgers 34, close game. Rutgers covers. I just don't think Rutgers is at a point here where they beat a top 10 team just yet.
I just think this new era is due for like that big win. Even though Michigan wasn't like ranked when we played them and their coach was on the verge of getting fired, I just think that was like a big moment for us. So that was like kind of like my generation win. I mean, we beat Arkansas my freshman year. That was pretty huge. Then you go back to the Ray Rice era, and we almost beat Michigan State my senior year. I just think this era right here is due for like that big, shocking, storm the field win.
This would be it. If they pulled it off, it would be one of the 3 biggest wins of all time.
Yeah,
we should leave it on Leonte's positive thought, other than my pick, which is Oregon 48, Rutgers 21. But Leonte said 56, 20, 52. And that's why let's leave it with that for readers. Positive, big, high scoring game. That'd be a fun night in Piscataway, man. You're going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be with your daughter.
I'm actually going to go to tailgate because it's homecoming. So I'm going to go to the tailgate, hang out with a bunch of buddies that I haven't seen in a while. And then I am actually going to leave the tailgate and go watch it at like a local bar or something. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, enjoy that. We can't thank you enough, Leonte, for coming on and telling some old stories. I love it. I was there and I didn't know half the stuff you were talking about, which is great. So appreciate that. And everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back after the Oregon game to recap it. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant, sponsored by the Heldrich Hotel. Head to nj.com/Rutgers for more Scarlet Knight content.